Hello, today I'm taking a look at an Italian wine. The wine is from Tenuta La Poderina. It's a Brunello di Montalcino and it's from the 1998 vintage. And I'm a little concerned that I might have had this in my cellar for a little too long. I should say sometimes this is referred to as Tenuta del Cerro La Poderina as a result of the fact that this estate, this single Tenuta La Poderina, is part of a larger group. And within the Tenuta del Cerro group, this is one of a number of prestigious estates that they have throughout Tuscany and Umbria. And Tenuta del Cerro is owned by, and in fact is the winemaking division of a large European insurance company called Gruppo Unipol. And the initial estate, Fattoria del Cerro, was originally owned by the Baiocchi family and had a winemaking tradition dating back to the 1920s. And it was bought, along with La Poderina, by SAI Agricola in 1978. And then in 2014, Fondiaria SAI Group was merged into the Unipol Group to give the current ownership structure. Now, I've been completely unable to find out any of the background prior to its purchase of Tenuta La Poderina. So if anybody knows any more, please do pop that in the comments below. The notes I've found say that it was purchased in 1978, and yet they say the first vintage didn't come until 1988, which might almost imply that when the estate was purchased, there were no vines there. However, I have also seen some suggestions, possibly incorrect, that wines exist that were made on this estate before then. Either way, being part of a group obviously offers Tenuta La Poderina the benefit of resources, expertise, financial backing and vision of a larger group, while at the same time it has the ability to maintain its own unique identity and to follow its own traditional winemaking philosophy, which they say is a question of blending older tradition with more modern methods. So La Poderina is located just south of Montalcino in Castelnuovo dell'Abate, and this is an area that's known for producing more balanced, elegant styles of Brunello di Montalcino. And about a third of the estate's vineyards are dedicated to growing Sangiovese Grosso, for this wine, the Brunello di Montalcino, and also for a wine called Poggio Abate, which is their Brunello di Montalcino Reserva. La Poderina also produces a small amount of Rosso di Montalcino, as well as a reasonable volume of Moscadello di Montalcino. In total, the estate is about 80 hectares, with somewhere in the region of 38 hectares of vineyards planted. Plantings for Brunello di Montalcino make up about 12.5 hectares. Rosso di Montalcino is about 5.5 hectares. There's 4 hectares planted for Moscadello di Montalcino. And then just say they have a remaining 14.9 hectares of other vineyards. Soils here are a medium loam with some clay deposits, relatively high in organic matter. Exposure is to the southeast and elevation is somewhere in the region of 350 metres above sea level. Vines are planted at a density of 5,000 vines per hectare, so neither particularly dense nor particularly sparsely planted. Training, they say, is to a spurred cordon, and production of the wine is somewhere a little over 50,000 bottles a year. As for the 1998 vintage, it's somewhat overlooked. It gets sandwiched between two great vintages, the 97 and the 99. But broadly speaking, is actually a very solid vintage. There was a benevolently temperate spring, ensuring good fruit set. The summer was long, hot, and really quite arid. I mean, they were verging on drought. But obviously, the heat was less of a problem for those estates such as Tenuta La Poderina, whose vineyards were at reasonable altitudes. Now, rain fell in mid-September and onwards into October. It's the practice at La Poderina to harvest in October, so they may have had to contend with some rot issues and some dilution. As I said when I was talking about the vineyards, this is made from Sangiovese Grosso, a particular clone of Sangiovese with larger berries, and the wine's made 100% from fruit coming off that particular clone of Sangiovese. The fruit's hand-picked, crushed, macerates in stainless steel tanks at temperatures that are controlled to between sort of 24 and 28 degrees C, so not really taking them up too hot, trying to control extraction in that way. They do say they were regularly pumping over daily throughout fermentation with 2 delestages as well, so completely removing all the fermenting must or wine from the tank, allowing the cap of skins to fall and returning it above that. So So alcoholic fermentation lasted for between 15 and 20 days according to the lot, and at the end of fermentation temperatures were allowed to rise to 29 degrees C, and there was a post-fermentation maceration. Given the fact that they don't say otherwise, I'm assuming that the malolactic conversion will have happened in tank, and the wine was then transferred into barrel, where it stayed for 4 months, undergoing a weekly batonnage to get those lees stirred up. Now, I don't have detail for the oak aging that was employed on the 98 vintage, but looking at more recent vintages, they're talking about 60% of the wine aging in barrique and the remaining 40% aging in 110 hectolitre either Italian or Slavonian oak casks. So the portion that was aging in barrique did that for 12 months, the portion in the larger barrels aged for 24 months. So I don't know how that worked, whether the portion that was in barrique actually went into the larger oak following its period there, or whether that actually stayed in tank till the two were unified at blending prior to bottling. So the period of aging in whichever sort of oak the wine was being stored in will have lasted somewhere in the region of 2 years, and then subsequent to that the wine was aged in bottle for a further 18 months prior to release to the market. So let's have a look at the wine, shall we, and see how we're getting on. I have to say, given the wine's age and given one or two comments I had read about it, I was expecting that the colour was going to be less deep than it is. This actually still has some quite good intensity. It's virtually opaque. The wine is perhaps becoming a little bit oranged and bricky at the rim, but in general there's actually quite a good ruby colour staying in there. I'm swirling it. The wine has 13% alcohol according to its label, but it's very readily forming tears on the side of the glass there. So I think we can take it that that's the tannins adding body there. So let's have a look at the aromas, shall we? My initial impression of the aromas is that they're entirely tertiary. They're very much forest floor, spices, leather. There's a real warmth there. I suppose there's sort of dried fig sort of notes. Perhaps you might say raisined hints. But actually, there's some really lovely lifted fruit top notes. While there are savoury notes, including cedary notes, hints of mushroom, you're also getting some delicate, perfumed, almost rose petal top notes. There's almost prune-like note. Perhaps even some delicate red fruit, hints of cooked plum or something like that. Not massively intense, but just delicate little hints there. And a spiciness about the wine. So let's see if the palate can match up to the interest I've found in the aromas. Well, again, the first impression is savoury, tertiary, developed, drying, leathery, cedary. But there is quite a good cut of acidity, which is giving a lovely mouth-watering sensation. And just where I'm seeing that, I'm seeing some of those cooked red plum notes. I'm seeing one or two sort of dried red fruit notes, dried cranberry, that sort of thing. Perhaps even the slightest hint of ripe red cherry. That's backed up by spiciness of nutmeg, cinnamon, almost a gingery hint, perhaps even an underlying touch of cedar. Just to talk about the structure, there's a very drying nature to the tannins right across my palate. They're fine, they're dusty, then eventually they resolve into an elegant silkiness. Those tertiary notes I was talking about, the mushrooms that I saw in the nose, are coming through a little more as truffle hints on the mid palate, which are delightful, and the acidity is sufficient that it's just allowing some of those sort of red plum notes, hints of dried cranberry to come through on the finish alongside those lovely smooth tannins that I suppose I'm almost seeing a slight cocoa note on them. The wine's not huge and it is fading relatively quickly. The notes I saw on this suggested that it was ideal for drinking from 2004 through to 2018, We're now in 2026. I think in honesty, the drinking window I saw was a little conservative. I think I would have got a little more power and a little more red fruit if I'd have tried drinking this 2 or 3 years ago. However, while I would counsel that if you have some of this, it's probably worth drinking up, I certainly don't think that it's tired and over the hill. There's an elegance and a freshness and a lovely mellowness to the wine. And actually, while I said that it didn't seem to have a particularly long finish, I am still getting hints of that fresh fruit on my palate as I'm talking to you now. So perhaps it's not fading quite as quickly as I thought. Looking at the Wine Searcher aggregated critic score, this gets a mark of 90 out of 100. So that's reasonably fair, but maybe the wine's been slightly underestimated, given the fact that it's lasted longer than those critics had estimated it should. I wonder whether 91 might have been a fairer score for it, but really I'm splitting hairs there. So thank you so much for joining me. I do hope you found the tasting of interest. If you have, it would be great if you could press the like button. I'd really appreciate that. And if you're watching these videos and you enjoyed them, do please sign up and subscribe. I'd really appreciate that, and it will help me to continue to develop the channel. If you have any friends you think might like to watch the video, do please feel free to pass it on to them. That would be fantastic. And if you have any comments, do please pop those in the comments box below. It would be great to know what you think about the wines I'm looking at, the tastings I'm doing, or anything else that relates to that. I will, of course, leave a link to the Wine Searcher webpage for this vintage of this wine, so you can see if there's any availability of this vintage, if it's available near you, and at what price. You can also see on the same page what other vintages are available, so you might want to look for something a little younger. So yes, thank you again for watching, and I do hope that maybe you'll manage to make some time and come and join me for another tasting in the very near future. Till then,